friends, up till now in business environment we have talked about the PESTEL framework, and we have talked about the political legal environment, economic environment, socio-cultural and technological environment. The time for now is to move to ecological environment. Ecological environment, basically what is happening in your surroundings. Ecology means the living and the non-living beings which constitute the nature. So many times instead of ecological environment we use the term natural environment also. So for example, there is an example of the 2013 floods in Uttarakhand which damaged the Kedarnath shrine. I hope you know about the Char Dhams that are there in Uttarakhand: Kedarnath, Badrinath, Gangotri and Yamunotri. So there are so many people who visit these four religious tourist sites every year, but because of the damage to the Kedarnath shrine and because of the number of tourists who had got stuck there and some of them died also, so many tourists who were planning to visit Uttarakhand to visit these sites, they cancelled their plan midway, and the various businesses which were operating in this particular part of the world, they had to suffer, be it the hotel owners, be it the restaurant owners, be it the ones who were providing taxi and cab services. So all these businesses had to suffer just because the tourist inflow reduced because of the Kedarnath shrine tragedy, and that was back in the year 2013. So what happens in the ecology can impact your business. For example, in recent times we have seen that climate change has led to extreme weather events. Extreme weather events would mean that if it is hot, it is very very hot. It's generally you see heat waves, temperatures above 40-45 degrees centigrade, and the temperature is really really high. On the other hand, if it is raining, it will rain the intensity of the rainfall would be very very high. So this is the meaning of extreme weather events. Earlier that was not the case, and this has been happening because of the climate change. Now what will happen because of extreme weather events? For example, if it is too hot, naturally it would be a good business opportunity for some businesses. For example, if you are selling ACs, if you are selling, let's say, cold drinks, if you are selling ice creams, or if you are selling coolers, then it can be a good opportunity for you. On the other hand, if you are selling products like, let's say you run a coffee stall, it would be difficult for you to carry on your business, because generally when it is very very hot, the customers would not prefer having coffee. So depending on the kind of business that you have, there would be an impact of changes in the ecology, changes in the nature. So this example I have taken, you would see that the global car market stakes, and this is the data of the year 2016, and you see that in 2016 also in China so many cars were getting sold. US also cars were getting sold, and this has only increased in the last few years. Now why are these cars getting sold? Because it was found out that the petrol and the diesel vehicles, or the internal combustion engine vehicles, they emit a lot of pollutants which ultimately degrade the environment. And because of this, the governments and the judiciary across the world, in many parts of the world, they have mandated a switch from petrol and diesel vehicle to relatively cleaner electric vehicles. In India also, by 2040, it is expected that after 2040 no petrol or diesel vehicle would be sold in the Indian market. So this is happening because of the pollution levels rising in the environment, because of the use of internal combustion engine vehicles, because of the use of petrol diesel vehicles, and because of the degradation of the environment they are causing, and that has led to this change. And naturally this would naturally be impacting so many businesses, including the ones who are selling automobiles, be it the four-wheelers, be it the two-wheelers, the ones who are selling ancillary products to the automobile firms. For example, automobile firms might be requiring an engine, so engine might be getting supplied by some other supplier, so some other supplier would also get impacted, because the engines are no more required in the petrol engine or the diesel engine would not be required anymore, because the company would have to switch to electric cars. That means the supplier firms which are manufacturing engines, petrol and diesel engines, and then they are selling to these car makers, they would also have to suffer. They would either have to switch to some other product, or otherwise they would be wiped out. So this is the kind of impact that may be seen in so many businesses just because of these changes in the environment. You talk about the neighborhood garage, the mechanics that are found in so many places on the highways, and they belong to the informal sector, and they are experts in the maintenance work of the vehicle and all. So they will also be impacted, and they will have to change their skill set. If after 2040 there are not going to be any more cars, petrol or diesel cars sold in India, then naturally they will not be able to run their business unless they also know how to correct the defects in an electric car, because slowly and slowly the number of petrol and diesel cars would reduce. So if they do not improve their skill set, if they do not upgrade their skill set, they are going to be wiped out. So this is how the changes in the natural environment can impact your business also. For example, many a times nowadays there are dry spells because of which the crops cannot grow. The dry spells would mean that there is no rainfall and the crops would die, and this is happening because of the climate change. Now the various firms which are in the business of selling agri inputs, seeds, pesticides, fertilizers, they are coming up with new variety of seeds which can withstand a dry spell, which do not require a lot of water during the growing period. So this is how businesses have to change themselves to adapt to the change in the environment. So as you can see here, ecological environment, you see that the environment is getting degraded, and the degradation is causing so many businesses to get impacted, is impacting so many businesses. For example, now it is very difficult because of the cutting down of trees. Now it is very difficult for businesses who used to basically use wood as raw material to obtain wood. For example, if you talk about those in the unorganized sector who do the woodwork, who produce the furniture articles, it is very difficult for them to have access to wood, just because there is so much regulation of cutting down the trees. The cutting down of trees is now being closely monitored and regulated. So this is the kind of impact that the businesses may have to witness when there is a change in their nature, when there is a change in the environment. And naturally, if somebody wants to buy a furniture made up of wood, he will have to pay more now. Again, resource availability, and slowly we are using up so many of our resources that were earlier available to us in abundance. For example, if you talk about water, now water earlier was in abundance, but now we have used it to such an extent that now you find that in many parts of the world water is not easily available. Water, specifically potable water, is not easily available and easily accessible, right? Around some years ago, Coca-Cola bottlers wanted to set up a plant in the Sahiya region of Uttarakhand, that is basically part of the Dehradun district, so Sahiya region of Dehradun district, but they were opposed tooth and nail by the local community. Why? Because the local community said that if a plant which requires water in lots of quantities is set up in some vicinity of the Sahiya region, it will draw out a lot of water, and ultimately this would lead to the groundwater table depleting, and it would become difficult for the local community to obtain water for their own requirements. And because of this widespread opposition against the Coca-Cola bottling plant in Saya region in Dehradun, the plant could not finally be set up there. So this is how changes in the environment may impact the businesses. Now let's talk a little bit about the global environment. This is different from the PESTLE framework that we have discussed, the PESTLE. We have discussed all the constituents of PESTLE: political, legal, PNL, E for economic, S for socio-cultural, T for technological, and then the last P is ecological environment. So we have discussed all of them. Now we also have to discuss the global environment. What do we mean by global environment? India is now a country which is closely integrated with the world. We export quite a number of items, and we also import quite a number of items to foreign countries. And so what is happening across the world may also impact us as an economy, and may also impact the businesses operating in our economy. So this is what we mean by global environment. What is happening around you? Have a look at the COVID-19 crisis and the losses that the businesses had to suffer just because of this. And you would recall that the crisis did not start here in India. It is said to have started, the first patient is said to have been reported in China, and then from there it spread to so many countries, and then later on around March it came to India. So this crisis was not one which started in India, but still now you see that it has impacted the Indian economy. Similarly, it has not only impacted the Indian economy, in the similar fashion it has also impacted the economies of so many different countries. And it is expected that this time, in this particular financial year, the Indian GDP will reduce by 6%. So there would be a contraction in Indian GDP which has never happened earlier in the history of free India. So something which is happening around you may have an impact on businesses inside the country also. Not only big businesses but small businesses also, the small retail owners also, the shopkeepers also, the barbers also. So many barber shops have been shut down because they may spread the infection. So ultimately what is happening across you may impact your business. It may be a small or a big business, but still may get impacted by what is happening in your surroundings, what is happening in as far a country as in America, right? So global environment, the various constituents, again, the competition from MNCs. Now this is an example of competition from MNCs, and I told you about how Videocon was not able to survive and Videocon was not able to do well here in India after 1991, when Indian markets were opened up for foreign made goods, and companies like Sony and the Samsung and LG, companies like Panasonic, Onida and Videocon are basically Indian firms. So these kind of companies, they entered the Indian market, and Videocon ultimately lost its market share to these kind of companies. And if you look at the scenario today, you will find out that Videocon does not figure among the top marketers as far as the TV markets or the consumer durable markets are concerned. So this could happen, and this is an example of how what is happening in other parts of the world may have an impact on your business. Samsung and Sony, these are companies from Japan and South Korea. LG and Panasonic, they're all companies from Japan and South Korea. And if they are able to devote more resources for research and development, come out with better product, have a better technology, have a better product, then naturally it's not going to impact only their rivals in their countries only. It might impact you also, just like it impacted Videocon. Again, WTO regulations are there. WTO is an organization which has been set up to promote international trade. So it is known as World Trade Organization. So World Trade Organization comes up with regulations comes up with procedures, rules to regulate the world trade. So world trade regulations may also impact how you are operating here in India. For example, the world trade regulations mandate the member countries to open up their economy for the foreign made goods. So naturally, India being a part of WTO will also have to reduce its barrier to goods produced in foreign countries, and because of that, the domestic producers here in India, domestic firms, they had to face a lot of competition. Again, some trends like global sourcing and global marketing are emerging. What do we mean by global sourcing? Since now most of the countries are very well integrated into the global economy, into the world economy, the sourcing, that is obtaining the raw material for production purpose, so that that sourcing is taking place globally. What do we mean by this? This means that earlier we were getting our raw material only from some domestic suppliers, but now if we are able to access a good quality raw material, we are able to obtain good quality raw material at lowest possible prices, then we may source it from China, we may source it from USA, we may source it from any other country in the world. So we can now source it from across the world depending on our requirements. We don't have to only source from within the country, which means I can have access to the best quality raw material, I can have access to the best quality supplies from across the world at the cheapest possible rates. Likewise, many countries and many companies are not only selling to their domestic customers, they are selling to customers across the world, and they are competing with other MNCs, multinational companies, which are also selling to the customers across the world. We can take example of the automobile firms like Ashoka Leyland, which is not only selling to customers here in India, but it is selling to customers in as far as America. Mahindra and Mahindra, same is the case with Mahindra and Mahindra. If you talk about the two-wheeler giant here in India, the Bajaj, they are selling their products in Indonesia. There are companies here in India from the IT sector, from the software services sector like TCS or Infosys. They are homegrown companies, and they are selling their services, they are offering their services and providing their services to the clients across the world. So this is the meaning of global marketing, and global sourcing would be purchasing the raw material from across the world depending on where it is available at the cheapest possible price and where it is available at a good quality level. So this is what is happening in our surroundings, and these kind of changes in the global environment may certainly impact our business. I'll give an example of what happens if you go for global sourcing. Earlier in India, we were sourcing our raw materials before India was more integrated. India was integrated with the global economy in 1991. We were sourcing our raw material. Most of the raw material was sourced from inside the country, and there were restriction on importing raw materials from outside the country also at that point of time. But now if you look at the scenario, you would find out so many companies in India, including the drug manufacturers, the companies which are engaged in producing drugs, the drug makers, they are dependent on raw material for China. And just because of the COVID 2019 crisis and because of the resultant shutdown of the Chinese economy, these drug manufacturers were not able to get supplies of raw material, because of which they had to ramp down their production. They had to reduce their production levels just because they didn't have the supplies of raw materials. The raw materials in this particular case, they are called APIs. So they were not able to lay hands on supply of APIs, and because of which they had to ramp down, they had to reduce the production levels, the quantity that they were producing every month or every week. So this is what might happen. This is what happens if you are dependent on suppliers in different countries for raw materials. So friends, with this we have discussed the business environments. Remaining two components also, the ecological environment and the global environment, and we have also come to the end of unit 1. It would be expected of you to please go through this unit, and as I had mentioned earlier, you please be ready with your own examples based on whatever newspapers you are reading or based on your magazine readings. And very soon we'll be having a test. in the test you will be expected to provide your own answers, provide your own examples, rather than simply using the examples that have been discussed by me. So the idea will be that you should go through these particular sessions that we are having and then think and relate whatever we are discussing here in these sessions to whatever you are reading in the newspapers, and then you would be able to come up with your own examples, and that is what is expected of you. So thank you very much.